Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Behaaloscha. And the Parsha contains a truly enigmatic story. In Parak Yud Beis, in chapter 12, the Torah says as follows: V'atedaber Miriam v'Aaron b'Moshe al odos ha'isha kushis asher lakach ki isha kushis lakach. Literal translation: Miriam spoke to Aaron regarding Moshe, specifically regarding Moshe Rabbeinu's wife, a Cushite woman, for Moshe Rabbeinu had married a Cushite woman. Remember, we know Moshe Rabbeinu's wife was Tzipora. Okay, next part of the story. Vayomru, they said to each other, Harak ach b'Moshe diber Hashem? Did Hashem only speak to Moshe? After all, halo gam banu diber. Hashem also spoke to us. Vayishma Hashem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu heard their conversation. Last part of the story, Va'ish Moshe anav ma'od mikol adam asher al pnei adam. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most exceedingly humble man, more humble than anyone else on this earth. Now the truth is, the next part of the story is that Miriam is stricken with saras. So the story itself seems incredibly troubling. What is happening over here? What are Miriam and Aaron talking about? Well, obviously, we know the topic of the conversation is Moshe Rabbeinu's marriage, but what exactly is it that they're talking about? What does Moshe Rabbeinu's humility have to do with this entire conversation? Now, we know Miriam was stricken with saras. We know that the punishment of saras is most closely associated with lashon hara, with gossip or slander, negative speech. So as such, we infer from the context that Miriam obviously spoke negatively about her brother, about Moshe Rabbeinu. But what's going on in the story? Again, what is the topic of conversation? And what does Moshe Rabbeinu's humility have to do with whatever it is that they are discussing? And the Medrash in Sifrei Zuta, the Medrash itself appears in a variety of different forms in different places. But I'll share with you the Medrash in the Sifrei Zuta. He writes as follows. The context of this is that Baruch Hashem, the needs of the Klal had become so enormous that Moshe Rabbeinu could not handle it on his own. So as such, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to appoint a new cadre, a new cohort of prophets of Nevi'im. And in the section immediately beforehand, the divine spirit had descended upon this new cohort of prophets who were then vested with Nevuah, vested with prophecy, and able to help Moshe Rabbeinu shoulder the responsibility of Klal Yisrael. So the Medrash says as follows: Kevan shenismanu hazakenim hidliku kol Yisrael neros v'asu simcha b'shvil sha'alu shivim zakenim l'surara. So, and again, these 70 elders were, so to speak, anointed, right? When they were brought in to the responsibility of leadership. So Klal Yisrael, they made like a kiddush, literally again. They lit candles. They made it into an entire celebration. 70 new leaders for Klal Yisrael, 70 new great men to help our exalted leader Moshe Rabbeinu lead us forward, literally lead us to the promised land. The Chevan Sherasa Miriam Haneros Amru Ashre Elu vi Ashre Nishosehen. Miriam, the sister of Moshe Rabbeinu, sees the incredible celebration, and she chimes in. She says, praiseworthy are these men, that they were worthy of such a position, and praiseworthy are their wives, to be married to such men. Who hears the conversation? Amrla Tzipora. Tzipora hears this, and she says, no. Al Tomri Ashre Nishosehen, Elo Oin Nishosehen. And now Tzipora gets involved. And Tzipora says, Miriam, I just want you to understand, being the wife of a leader is not all it's cracked up to be. And she goes on to say that from the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was essentially conscripted into the service of God, he hasn't really been home. He hasn't lived in the house. He hasn't been part of the family. So Tzipora essentially was saying, when Klal Yisrael gained a leader, I lost the husband. And this is the first time that Tzipora really ever shared her personal pain. Now understand, she's sharing it with her sister-in-law. She's sharing it in a very private way. You know how sometimes you say something and what you're saying is really innocuous and what you're saying is really fine, but it hits a nerve for someone else. So it's almost like Klal Yisrael is celebrating these brand new leaders. Miriam is effusive with her praise for these men, effusive with the praise and privilege for their wives. And Tzipora hears this. And Tzipora's like, no, Miriam, yes, but no. Of course it's beautiful and of course it's wonderful, but just understand the sacrifice that often the family of Jewish leaders have to make. She said, Klal Yisrael gained Moshe Rabbeinu, and I lost Moshe the husband, and my children lost Moshe the father. That was the nature. Obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu is in a different category. Moshe Rabbeinu is in a different circumstance, but this is what Tzipora was sharing. I wouldn't even use the word complaining or lamenting, but simply sharing, probably in a very private and vulnerable moment with her sister-in-law. So what happens? Miriam hears this, and the Medrash says, "Vatadaber Miriam va'aron b'Moshe al odos ha'isha al iske prishusa min ha'isha." So now, says the Medrash, Miriam hears about this, and who does she go to? She goes to Aaron, because she feels that this is not right. She feels that her brother Moshe is acting inappropriately. And she goes to Aaron, who's the big brother, right? Aaron is the big brother of the family, to discuss this. Again, not with the intention, chas shalom, maligning her brother. This is Miriam Hanaviyah, Miriam, who led the Jewish women in Shira after Yam Suf. But she's bothered. She's bothered. She's bothered by the pain of her sister-in-law, and she's bothered by what she perceives to be the erroneous behavior of her younger brother, of Moshe. And she says to Aaron, the Medrash says the following: Amru, Gaivasan hu Moshe. So they say, now it sounds like they're saying it together, but Miriam again seems to have been the instigator of the conversation. Listen to this. Moshe Rabbeinu, he's a Bal Gaiva. He's arrogant. He's arrogant. V'chilo dibra HaKadosh Baruch Hu ela imo bilvad. After all, we're also prophets. Aaron was a Navi. Miriam was an Aviyah. So they say, listen, HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to us, but yet we still maintain normal married lives. We still have families. We still live at home. We still maintain normal relationships with a spouse. Ela imo bilvad kvar dibra min avim harbe v'imanu v'lo perashnu min ishosenu kimo shepershu. So this is incredible. So according to the Medrash now, we understand what happened. Appointment of the sages, of these new elders, of these new prophets, everybody celebrating. Miriam praises their wives. Tzipporah says, calm down. It's a difficult life. It's a difficult life. Miriam says, what's wrong? What's going on? Tzipporah tells her everything. Miriam goes to Aaron, shares with Aaron, but here's where they make the judgment call. And this is where the mistake is made. The mistake is by calling Moshe Rabbeinu a Bal Gaiva. Moshe Rabbeinu is arrogant. He thinks he's better, but he's not better. God speaks to him. God speaks to us. We didn't distance ourselves from our families. We didn't distance ourselves from our spouses. And in that moment of condemnation, in that moment of judgment, this is where everything goes south in this story. And now the Torah already tells us, you see, the Torah, Hakdosha, is coming to the defense of the one who brought it down from Shamayim to Aretz. Moshe Rabbeinu was the bridge. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, our teacher, is the one who went up in the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights to bring us down the Torah. So therefore, the Torah Kedosha Kiviyachol comes to the defense of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Ribono Shel Olam comes to the defense of Moshe Rabbeinu. And before Miriam is stricken with saras, which indicates to her the error in her ways, even before that, the Torah says, by the way, V'ha'ish Moshe Anav Mikol Adam. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble man. Now, on a most basic level, the Medrash relates, why are we being told about Moshe Rabbeinu's humility? To say that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't respond, right? He heard what was happening. He heard the mumbling between his siblings. Didn't say anything. Didn't say anything. The ability not to respond even when you're insulted. The ability not to respond even when you're judged. The ability to respond even when you're belittled a little bit. Right? Lemaisa is an incredible display of anava, of humility. But perhaps the Torah is coming to teach us something additional. If we look, we speak about humility also, and we extol humility as a virtue that we all want to try to acquire. But I think that often humility is misunderstood. People think falsely and erroneously that humility means thinking that you're nothing. When a person thinks that they're nothing, that's not humility, that's low self-esteem, that's poor self-image, that's a lack of self-worth. What is humility? And there are many different definitions for what anavon humility means. The Ramchal, gives the following definition. He says, this is in Perek Aleph, chapter 11, which is Shar HaAnava, the chapter of humility, or the gate of humility. He says, Hine, klal inyan ha'gaiva huzeh. What's gaiva? So sometimes to appreciate something, you have to understand the opposite. What's arrogance? What's arrogance? Sha'adam machshiv atzmo be'atzmo. Everything is about me. Gaiva is egocentricity. Gaiva is self-centeredness. Gaiva is everything is me. Everyone has to do for me. Everyone has to cater to me. Everyone has to be there for me. Everyone has to yield to me. Life, circumstances, all should go exactly the way that I want it. That's gaiva. So conversely, what's anava? What's humility? And here the Ramchal says in Perek Beis, he says, Hine klal ha'anava heyos ha'adam bilti machshav atzma mishum tam shiyah v'zeh hefech ha'gaiva mamish. So, if gaiva is egocentricity, then by definition, anava, humility, is selflessness. But I think what the Ramchal is trying to highlight is something even a little bit deeper. See, gaiva, arrogance, is when everything is about me. Another humility is when I recognize that I am here to serve a greater purpose. Life is not about me. Life is about what I could do for the other. Life is about what I could do for the collective. I have a mission. I have something to accomplish. It can't just be that the entire point of 120 years in this world is to serve the self, is to go ahead and bloat the ego, is to go ahead and just make myself feel good and make myself feel happy and make myself feel valued. It's good to be happy and it's good to feel valued, absolutely. But Gaiva says everything in this world is about me and my pleasure and my needs. And Anova, humility, says it's not about me. It's not about me. I'm here to serve a greater purpose. I'm here with a sense of mission, and often that mission manifests itself. That purpose manifests itself not in what I can do for myself, but what I can do for the other. And perhaps Torah Kadosh is telling us is like this. Chevra, do you think that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to be a normal guy? I think Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to come home after a day at work, eat dinner with the family, relax, I don't know, really, read the Sinai Times, whatever he was doing. You think he didn't want to learn Daf Yomi, do Mishnah Yomi, Shtay Mikra? You think he didn't want to be a regular person? You think he didn't just want to come into Eretz Yisrael with his family, although they were from Shevet Levi, so they weren't going to have a portion, just to settle down with his family, have a beautiful and simple life? You think he didn't want to take long walks with Tzipora and just, be happy in the life that they've built together? Or go ahead and spend a little time learning with his kids? You think Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want that? Remember, it's important to understand. Moshe Rabbeinu was drafted into the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was conscripted. He decided to make that faithful turn to see what was happening by the Sneh, and that was the HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you're my guy. Moshe Rabbeinu represents the highest level of selflessness, a willingness to go ahead and literally push your own needs all the way to the bottom, so that you could serve your sense of purpose, you could serve your sense of mission, you could be there and do for the other. This was Moshe Rabbeinu. That's Anova. Moshe Rabbeinu is the opposite of a Baal Gaiva. You see, Miriam and Moshe didn't understand their brother. They thought he was being a Baal Gaiva, and the irony of ironies was Moshe Rabbeinu was the antithesis of Gaiva. Gaiva is all about me. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most selfless man to ever live in this world. He gave up everything because he felt a sense of purpose and a sense of mission. And Chevra, what an incredible and important lesson for us. We are still reeling from the losses of our soldiers, from the losses of our precious soldiers last weekend, last Shabbos and Sunday. And it is overwhelming, but it's overwhelming and it's heartbreaking, it's inspiring. Why? Each of these soldiers, each with their own identity in their own way, are Moshe Rabbeinu-like in their anava, a willingness of a young person to put his own needs on the side, don the holy uniform of Tzahal, and go out to fight the wars of Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, knowing full well what the risks are, what the dangers are, what the potential sacrifice is, but being so much of an honor, of being so humble that your own needs don't matter because you know that you have a sense of purpose, a sense of mission. Klal Yisrael lost more than 1 million of Moshe Rabbeinu's last Shabbos. More than 1 million of Moshe Rabbeinu's. But Chevra, it behooves us to instill these same ideals and ideas into ourselves. We live in an age where everything feels often so selfish and so self-centered and so egocentric. And we are an Ar Lagayim, we are a light unto the nations. And we show the world how to behave. Our army shows what selflessness is. Our people show what selflessness is. And as individuals, we have to try to emulate the Anav of Moshe Rabbeinu. Maybe we have to stop focusing a little bit on what I need and a bit more on what we need. And what each of us as individuals could do to Meretz Hashem contribute to the collective. We should be Zocheh Meretz Hashem to find our inner Moshe, to find our inner Anava, to find our mission, to find our purpose, to sometimes put our own needs on the side just for a little while so that we can accomplish and do something so much greater. Wishing everyone a good night of Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.